there is a sense that the relationship is on a good path, on a steady path, notwithstanding Trump being Trump. And as Ambassador Arun Singh says, the announcement of reciprocal tariffs wasn't targeted at India. India just happens to be one of those countries that gets caught up in that policy. How do you see the visit? And intriguingly, for once, the American media is actually paying attention. Can't hear Sree. Can we unmute Sree? Yes, Sree, you're muted at your end. Just unmute yourself, please.
I think India had a very good day. Prime Minister Modi had a very good day. And what we are used to as Americans watching Trump is foreign leaders manipulating Trump by just praising him nonstop. What we saw this time was praise from Trump to Modi, which Americans are not used to seeing. So that was a big part of what unfurled. And I think that's something to watch. And as you've said, that he's doing sort of everything that he has promised, this whole part about Gaza. And I think India has an important role to play in that. India should be speaking up. India has a long time relationship and investment in the region, and they should be speaking up now to curb America in this crazy idea to evacuate 2 million Gazans and turn it into a resort town, which is what Trump wants to do.
Yeah. You did say that you thought India and Modi had a good day. What felt different?
I think it's just watching the way in which these two mega personalities really talking about each other, talking about the potential of India. This is just the way that both of them project strength and project that idea that they are doing the best for their own countries. But in this case, they have that friendship that they had. It's a genuine connection that they've built over the two administrations that Trump has had now. So one is only 3 weeks old, but he had 4 years. And so America totally understands the value of India, and they will do as much as they can, but within the limits of, as we've heard already, the world around economics and tariffs, defense, all of that. So this is overall, as I said, this is something that even the American media, which is, as you said, very skeptical and doesn't even pay attention to India.
Yeah, correct.
This was eye-opening for them as well.
I'm going to play out the CNN clip, but I have to ask you, who's singing beautifully behind you?
I'm sorry, I'm in a hotel in Bali, so there's somebody singing here. I'm sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry. I was like, okay, somebody's very delighted at this Trump-Modi meeting. Now, how did CNN cover it? As Sree said, as somebody who's lived in America, studied journalism in America, one of the things we've always had to contend with is how insular the American media is. And when they're talking about India, they tend to be critical. They see India through a singular lens. It was very, very intriguing to see this particular clip play out on CNN. I'm going to just play this and then come to Anang and Prasad. Take a look.
What stood out to you in this joint press conference?
You know, Isabel, I think we have now seen, first with the Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba's very positive meeting with Trump, and now what apparently is a very positive meeting with Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This is a masterclass for other leaders around the world to kind of know how they should walk into a negotiation with President Trump to achieve the best possible outcome, given that you have to expect, I mean, for example, Prime Minister Modi here arrived in, he got a great welcome from the Indian diaspora in D.C., but then, as he's on the ground in the United States, President Trump announces reciprocal tariffs, which everyone in India knows could have a massive effect because of how high India's tariffs are. President Trump mentioned 70% on some American cars. They used to be 125% on certain luxury cars over $40,000. So India has actually reduced those tariffs already. Whether Prime Minister Modi knew or was expecting that President Trump would make this reciprocal tariff announcement, which could potentially cause Modi to lose a lot of face if he went back to India without making significant progress. But at the end of this meeting that they had, and the meeting went long, the press conference started late, they announced essentially the best possible outcome, which is that the two sides are going to try to fast-track negotiations on a trade deal. And India is getting some of what it wants, too, like more U.S. investment in nuclear energy in India and also those F-35s that you mentioned earlier. So both of these leaders, President Trump's able to list out all of the things that the United States will gain, and Prime Minister Modi is able to do the same. And that, I keep going back that, make India great again, MEGA, and MEGA plus MAGA equals mega. Clearly, they might have had a PR team to think that up, and that's exactly the kind of clever branding that President Trump certainly loves to hear, Isabel. So the Indians did their homework; they understood the assignment, and Prime Minister leaves looking as good as can be expected.
The Indians did their homework. They came prepared. That's as much an acknowledgement of Prime Minister Modi as it is of Indian diplomats. Ambassador Singh, just before I go to Anand and Prasad, I think I must allow you a 30-seconder there. Quite rare for CNN to say what it did.
But I think, as you know, especially under Prime Minister Modi, there has been an effort to come out with articulations, slogans that make the point impactfully. And I think clearly this particular formulation hit the nail on the head.
All right, Anand, you've been in communications. What's the big story for you out of this meeting?
Assumption of the relationship that existed before the Biden administration. So I think this is only the beginning of negotiations. This is not the announcement of any. Nothing was signed as such, apart from the nice big coffee table book that President Trump gave to Prime Minister Modi. But other than that, I think this is the start of a beautiful resumption of a beautiful relationship. And I think in the wake of
that sounds almost Casablanca-ish.
Yes, I pretty much am quoting from Casablanca. Yeah, so it's it's one of those things where Europe has been on the outs with Trump. They knew that coming in the moment he won. Canada has been on the outs. So there's many countries that are just not on good relationships with Trump. And I think this meeting has shown that what Trump can do when he feels inclined to be friendly to you, and vice versa. So, Justin Trudeau can come over to Mar-a-Lago. He can fly over any day he wants, but he's not going to get that kind of reception. Even though we're much bigger allies with Canada than we are with India, we're not allies with India. So I think these announcements are just a signal of where the United States foreign policy is going, and it's also an announcement of where India is going as far as Prime Minister Modi's third term. In terms of making sure that the country is set for prosperity in terms of
is this personal rapport? Is this personal rapport, or is it the importance of India, or is it a bit of both?
It's a bit of both because again, Trump has always valued those personal relationships. He always touts his friendship with world leaders, and I think that's important. I think the Europeans sometimes roll their eyes at when Trump says certain things about, oh, I'm friends with Putin, I'm friends with Xi, I'm friends with Modi, but I think that's important. And again, look at the President Biden gave a state dinner in 2023, but the level of friendship that we saw today completely outshines the state level visit that happened in 2023. So I think that's very obvious to people on both in India and in America that the friendship here is much bigger, much better than what there was with Biden or with other administrations that that previously were there.
Right. So Prasad, the friendship has to translate into specifics, right? And that will be its benchmark. And right now, as Anand reminds us, it's not that any agreement was signed. It's all about intent. It's all about the beginning. You're somebody who sees life from both sides, right? You're a green card holder living in the United States of America, an Indian living in the US. How did you see the optics, but also the substance?
Well, I think all of us have already commented and we have witnessed the optics ourselves. So rather than focus on the optics, I would talk about the substance. As a businessman who manufactures products in India and exports them into the US and sells them here, tariffs have been a nightmare ever since Trump took office, even before he took office. Tariffs have been a nightmare. And just let me spend a second here explaining the difference between tariffs and taxes. Tariffs it's almost like an extortion, because you have to pay tariffs even before you're able to sell the products. So my products have to enter the US. I have to first pay the tariff. It's a huge impact on my working capital cycles. Whereas taxes are after I sell the product, that's when a tax has to be paid. So it's a huge difference, and exporters into the United States from India have all been worried about tariffs impacting us. And I think the reciprocal tariffs that were announced is a huge relief to everybody in India. So I think we have survived that successfully. And reciprocal tariffs, again, are interesting, because if India is going to charge 75% of tariff on American cars coming into India to be sold, then likewise, reciprocity demands America charges 75% on cars made in India being sold in the US, which is not the case for us. So, reciprocal tariffs, if you look at it at the next level of detail, do not impact us as much at all, because a lot of the trade between India and the US is not one-to-one, where we sell them something and they sell the same product back here. So in my opinion, if it is literally taken for what it is, we should be okay, even if that is the case. But in any case, I think the 180-day period for studying reciprocal tariffs and coming out with the actual announcement that Trump made yesterday, that gives relief to all the countries. And also the trade deal discussions between India and the US that's happening might be a way to avoid it altogether, or at least lessen the impact significantly. So I am very pleased with the actual outcome and the impact it has on both the countries.
Okay, let's come back to geopolitics. We spent some time on trade. What's interesting is that Trump was asked about Khalistan. What's also interesting is that there's been an ongoing case in a US court involving Khalistani separatist Gurpatwan Pannu. There is an Indian former official who's been taken into custody. There has been an allegation that somehow there was an Indian hand involved in the attempt to eliminate this Khalistani Gurpatwan Pannu. Trump is asked about Khalistan today, and I want to play that clip out and come back now to geopolitics. Take a look.
The question is about the fact that you've decided to extradite Tahawoor Rana. Thank you so much. India has been waiting to have him back in India, to bring him to justice. But there are many other elements in the United States of America, particularly Khalistani separatists who've been working against Indian interests. How is the United States of America going to cooperate on that front with India? There have been allegations that have been leveled against Indian agencies by the Biden administration. Are you going to relook that with Tulsi Gabbard as DNI now?
Well, I don't think India had a very good relationship with the Biden administration. They wouldn't sell them oil and gas, which is rather hard to believe, because it's a good thing to do. And a lot of things happened that weren't very appropriate, I thought, between India and the administration, the Biden administration. But as you said, we're giving a very violent man, it seems to me. I mean, I don't know that he's been convicted yet or will be, but let's assume he's a pretty violent person. We're giving him back to India immediately. And there are more to follow, because we have quite a few requests. So we work with India on crime, and we want to make it good for India, and it's very important. So that kind of a relationship is very important to us. Okay?
Very violent man. I'm not sure how much of the intricacies of 2008 Trump knows about, or indeed of David Headley, who I think we're never going to get back, who's the chief mastermind. But let's come back to the geopolitics. Ambassador Arun Singh, Tahawoor Rana's extradition, of course, is a big deal. But my question is somewhat different. General Shukla made the point about, there should be what is it? MIGA and MAGA need to come together to contain the rise of China. There has been some skepticism, some apprehension that Trump, being Trump, might actually cut a deal with the Chinese. India has begun its own process of rapprochement and back channeling and front channeling with the Chinese. What for you is a red flag, speaking geopolitically, right? Like, Trump could cut a deal with the Chinese. Then what happens to Quad? Then what happens to the importance of India? Then it's the Indian economy. That India has to grow its economy for it to remain sort of have leverage if the countervailing value as a force to counter China goes.
So, Barkha, I'll make a couple of points there. So if you see the commentary coming out of the US, in the national security team around President Trump, the national security advisor, the Secretary of State, they are seen as people who are China hawks. In his economic team, Elon Musk the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Commerce Secretary designate Howard Lutnick, they're seen as people heavily invested in the China relationship. And so the debate in the Trump team will play out at different stages with different outcomes. President Trump himself has signaled, and people who worked with him earlier also have signaled, that he would be quite happy to do an overall trade agreement with China, because that works for the US, get the Chinese to buy more. If you remember, his former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, had written that in 2019, in a meeting with Sree, President Trump had said, if you buy more farm produce from the United States, I will ease up the pressure on China. Now, whatever be the immediate sort of articulation related to China, I believe that the essence of an intense technology competition with China has come to stay. Recently, the Chinese AI company DeepSeek, when it released its product, the stock market capitalization of the US fell by $1 trillion and of NVIDIA by $600 billion. So the intensity of the competition has come to stay. And if you look at the statement that the Defense Secretary Hegseth made in Europe, where they basically said that they were walking back from their current effort in Ukraine, one of the reasons he cited is that US has to deal with the peer competitor with China in the Indo-Pacific. And that's where it is going to focus. So if the US...
Yet if I may interject, just one curious point in all of this is Elon Musk's known closeness to China, right?
Of course.
So, yeah.
No, I'm factoring that in. And it's part of the comments that I have I'm making to you. But so the primacy, the essence of the competition with China will remain. And if the US wants to win that competition with China, their companies have assessed that they need the partnership with India, because India is the only other country with 1.4 billion with very strong tech-skilled human capital. For example, 20% of the global talent in semiconductor design is today based in India. You have 1,700 global capability centers of multinational corporations, most of them American, who are doing cutting-edge R&D and technology development work for the global operations of those companies. So there is certainly the China dimension. But aside from the strategic challenge for the US companies to retain their global lead in innovation, they believe they need the India partnership. So I don't think we have to worry necessarily on how the substance of the US-China relationship will evolve. The competition is there to stay. And for that, the US will want, and as they've signaled during this visit and in the joint statement, they believe that a strong India in its own right will be a natural constraint on an assertive and a unilateralist posture of China. So I think we should look at it in that context.
Gen Raj Shukla, do you agree? Since you believe it's all about the containment of China, Trump is known to be transactional. He has people in his government who are close to the Chinese. I know Ambassador Singh has just made a sort of compelling argument that the relevance of India will remain. However, I keep thinking, what would happen if the two cut a deal? I mean, the Quad, for example, what is the meaning of the Quad then?
So I know before that, just on the geopolitics, just let me make 3 points come to my mind. One is, while I did make a case for opportunity in our relationship with the Trump administration, I'm not for one suggesting that this bonhomie and backslapping is going to lead to outcomes, in a very quick way. In fact, we'll have to play the hardball very well with the USA, just as China does. So if I may just make this point, we are entering a very complicated phase of statecraft and diplomacy between a declining hegemon, if you don't like the word declining, a threatened hegemon, a rising challenger, and this aspiring Vishwabandhu. And therefore, the way you play your statecraft and all, and this is the point I wish to make now, this is the time to step up your game in national security.
But if you believe the Americans are diminishing, you're clearly not buying the MAGA.
I'm saying they are challenged. They are challenged.
Yes,
I mean, he'll try to do MAGA, but they are challenged. Nobody has challenged the Americans like the Chinese. So this is that moment. For example, he has shown us the F-35 carrot because we need it greatly. I mean, in our context, without the F-35, we're not penetrating in none of these air defenses around us. But the F-35 is a long way off. So I'm sure he's good. The other initiatives that he's announced, Asia, global digital highways in the IOR, reciprocal defense procurements, they haven't been fleshed out. But that will be a test for us, whether for us, while we would like to take technology and all from USA, we will have to give business. And there are many deficiencies in the way Indians act. May I also point out, at the end of the day, I mean, he may cut a deal this way, that way, but one thing I'm sure, his aim is to strengthen deterrence in the Indo-Pacific. That's what Elbridge Colby and a lot of people are saying. That may be the reason why Hegseth has said nothing more in Ukraine. So, though not easy to trust Trump, but I think the broader strategic focus of the USA is to strengthen deterrence in the Indo-Pacific so that Taiwan doesn't happen. And maybe one more point. I have been an investor. Arun Singh is, of course, a old American hand, but I have been following Steve Bannon, the ideologue of Trump, and we must we must pay attention to him. For example, on the H-1B, while Musk says it should be retained, he argues it should not. And the argument that he's giving is very, interesting. He says this myth that has been spread, that superior Indian talent is coming to Silicon Valley, is not true. It has been done by the corporates to lower the costs. And that part of the MAGA campaign is also going to threaten the Indo-US relationship. So in sum, it is a very complicated phase of geopolitics and statecraft and all that.